He was walking through the Garden Tomb area, talking to the man who was in charge of the Garden Tomb at that time. And they're talking about antiquities. And they passed a certain place on the cliff face, and Ron's left hand went out, and he said, "That's Jeremiah's grotto, and the Ark of the Covenant's in there." And now I was not married to him until 1988. But he's told me my job when we got married was I was to document all of his work. That was really why we got married.
Disclaimer. To the Pharisees and Karens out there.
How dare you!
All guests on this show do not reflect the opinions of the host. The purpose of this show is to have interesting conversations, stretch our minds, and grow.
Not what we want!
If you are looking for an echo chamber, viewer and listener discretion is advised.
You talk about extreme.
What is happening and what is up? Hold out your glass, because we're about to fill it up.
Torches high.
Look at it from a different perspective.
Hey guys, what is happening and what is up? Hold out your glass, because we are about to fill it up today. Welcome to the Prometheus Lens Podcast, the place where the conversations are always enlightening. I'm your host, Doc Brown. Here we like to use the allegory of the Prometheus Lens to take a second look at everything. Well, hey guys, if you're new to the channel, welcome to the hero's journey. Be sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Be sure to check out our banner below with all of our social medias at their various platforms. That would be much, much appreciated. Well, today, guys, I'm beside myself. I will try to put my fangirl hat away and try to be professional today. But this is someone that I followed her and her husband's work for many years. It got me excited to dive into my Bible and see the physical evidences of the Bible. Growing up, I was always talked about just blind faith. But thanks to the work of these people here, it's something that you can see, you can feel, you can taste, and you can touch, and it just affirms your faith. It gives you a firm foundation to stand on. But I'm really excited to welcome to the show today Mary Nell, and her husband is the late great Ron Wyatt, who discovered Noah's Ark, the Red Sea crossing, the Ark of the Covenant, and so much more. But I'm just really thankful for you to come on and talk with us today, Mary. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here.
For those that are maybe just not familiar with you guys and what you do, kind of just give a little synopsis of what you and your late husband got into and some of the things that you guys do in your ministry.
Ron began in 1977 looking for these. First, he started looking for Noah's Ark. He had read about it in a Life magazine in 1960, and he thought this particular one was it. So he went in 77. But then when he got there, he couldn't work on it. It was so big, and he's not an archaeologist. He couldn't excavate. So he came home, prayed for an earthquake, out there to see what was in this thing. And then the next year, instead of going back to Noah's Ark, he decided that him and the boys would fly to Israel, go down to Eilat, which is on the Gulf of Aqaba branch of the Red Sea. And there's two branches. There's the Gulf of Suez, which is over against Egypt proper, and then you cross what the Bible calls the wilderness of the Red Sea, and there's the other arm. The Sinai Peninsula is in between these two arms. And it's called the Sinai Peninsula today because Constantine's mom said, Mount Sinai's in there. And so it gained the name, the Sinai Peninsula. But in the Bible, it's referred to as the wilderness of the Red Sea. And so he decided that he thought the crossing had to take place on the Gulf of Aqaba. So that year, him and his boys, they flew into Israel, drove down to Eilat, rented a plane and a pilot, and the pilot's name was Moses, which they thought was pretty cool. And he flew them down, and that's where Ron saw the Gulf of Aqaba had a beach on it at Nuweiba. It's called Nuweiba Beach, and it's massive. It just sticks out into the sea. And he knew, based on the biblical account of their travels and their arriving there, that there had to be well over 1 million people, perhaps even 2 million, and their flocks and herds. And this beach would hold it. Mm-hmm. And so that's what he did in the 78. But then him and the boys went scuba diving. They thought, if this is it, there should be maybe some chariot parts, because the Bible talks about the Israelites found the dead bodies on the shore on the other side. So Ron thought, okay, most of the stuff will be on the other side, which is Saudi Arabia. Mm. But he thought maybe there was something here, and he did. He found things, chariot wheels and parts of chariots that were covered in coral. They never, ever would have been preserved if the coral hadn't attached to them. Mm-hmm. What it did is bones, wood, all of those things are organic. And coral is an animal, and it attached to those and ate on it and preserved the shape. So when he saw those things, he knew Mount Sinai was in Saudi Arabia. So that was a new project in 78. But while they were diving in 78, he sunburned his feet by diving too close to the surface, and the sun sunburned him pretty bad. He couldn't get his flippers on the next day. So him and his boys, they drove right back up. You just go straight up till you get to the Dead Sea. Then you keep going, turn, and go right into Jerusalem. And it wasn't time for their ticket yet, so they had a few days. He'd never been to Jerusalem. This was his first time, and he thought, well, I've got time. Let's go look at stuff. So they did. And that was where he was walking through the Garden Tomb area, talking to the man who was in charge of the Garden Tomb at that time. And they're talking about antiquities. And they passed a certain place on the cliff face, and Ron's left hand went out, and he said, that's Jeremiah's grotto, and the Ark of the Covenant's in there. Mm. And now I was not married to him until 1988. But he's told me my job when we got married was I was to document all of his work. That was really why we got married, because he needed help. And so he said that when that happened, he was so humiliated. He did not say that. He said it just came out of his mouth. He did not point like that. He said his arm just did that. So in retrospect, he said, okay, that was either something divine or it came from the other side. It was from darkness. He said, well, I need to study this out, because the man was excited. He said, we want you to excavate. Come back. And he went home and studied, and he said, why would the Ark of the Covenant be in there? Because it is, the Garden Tomb is actually part of the area of Mount Moriah that has been quarried out. That mountain was used as a quarry a long, long time ago. And so he thought, and then he realized that there is a very old wall maybe a quarter or an eighth of a mile from the entrance to the Garden Tomb, that they think may have been the wall for the, it was a defensive wall, or shall I say an offensive wall, probably during the time of Nebuchadnezzar, because it says they built forts round about the city when they came to attack. And so he thought, okay, that piece of wall is out there, even if it's not the one of Nebuchadnezzar, even if it's a later one, it's probably in the same location, because they would build the walls in the same place. And what Babylon was doing, remember, they were told, Jeremiah told them they were going to go into exile in Babylon. And they didn't want to do that, but it happened. And since they didn't do it willingly, God allowed Nebuchadnezzar to bring his armies, and they set up camp around the north side, because that's really the place where they're vulnerable. You can't really attack them along the edges because it's such deep gullies. An army just couldn't, So when he figured that out, he said, all right, maybe they took the ark right before, when they were surrounded by armies, and maybe they could have carried it in that no man's land between the wall that Nebuchadnezzar's army built and the wall of the city of Jerusalem. So he says, okay, I'll come back. And so he came back and started digging, and that went on for several years. So for the next several years, he was digging in Jerusalem, and he was working also in Egypt at that time. And I mean, the main part of Egypt. He found where he believed was where Joseph had, overseen the grain distribution. And he did a lot of research on who was who during the Exodus. His research is so extensive that most people find it hard to believe. And yes, it would be hard to believe, except, as Ron would say, that's how you know God did it. So that, I guess, would come to 1983, the end of 83. He had been applying for a visa to go find Mount Sinai. He says, it's over in Saudi Arabia. I know it is because I found the chariot stuff.
Right.
And he kept applying, and they never would let him in. So he decided to just sneak in. Yeah, let's just do that. Because he had checked around, and what he learned was that if you get caught in Saudi Arabia back then without a visa, they just kick you out of the country. So he thought, okay, no problem. I can handle that. So he goes over there, and he has his boys with him. And then when he tells them, they go to Jordan, and they're close to the border with Saudi. And when he told them what he was going to do, they said, well, we're coming too, Dad. We're not going to let you do this by yourself. And that was kind of a surprise to him. He didn't count on that. He didn't want. See, when they were in Turkey in 1977, they got attacked in their hotel. And he said he would never take the boys to Turkey again. And he didn't. Well, I think in later years, he took Ronnie back, but we're talking, many, many, many years later after he was well grown up. But he thought about that, and he said, well, okay. So they all went. They snuck across the border. And unbeknownst to Ron, he didn't really tell many people what he was going to do. But he told two people. And one of them was Colonel Jim Irwin, who he highly respected. He was an Apollo astronaut who had walked on the moon, or drove the rover on the moon. And he was searching for Noah's Ark on Mount Ararat. So Ron thought, he just really trusted Jim. He held him in very high esteem. And then he told another person, I won't mention his name right now, because at the time he thought this person was on his side, shall we say. So when they got over there, Ron was able to find the mountain. He had lurked, the only maps he had back in 83, 82 were flight maps. You could buy those. And, this is what pilots used when they're flying. But he found an area that he thought looked like an area that was surrounded in the rim of an ancient volcano, mountains all around it, and very large. And he thought, okay, that might be big enough for the camp, because for a camp with that many people and that many animals, they're going to need an awful big area to live. And it was right next to a mountain in the Jebel el-Lawz range. So he was able to direct his driver in that direction. There were no roads in here. This was a very remote area. And as we're driving along, and the driver's like, I don't know where. He didn't understand English either. But they stopped the car and asked a Bedouin, Musa Mountain, because they know those Muslims, they revere Moses. And this one Bedouin, that's the only person they saw, he said, oh, Jebel Musa Henna. That means the mountain of Moses is right here. They were right at it. And he was able to direct the driver to go in, and that's when he saw an altar, just everything. I mean, he knew without a doubt this was it. But as they're coming out, they get run off. Someone comes and tells them, just get out of here. So the driver takes them, drives them, I think, to the airport in Hakel. And when they just decided, well, instead of sneaking across, let's just go through, and that's when they were arrested. And what they learned was that this man that he had trusted had called the Saudi embassy and told them the Wyatts were Israeli spies. And there was a reason for him doing that. But I won't, he wanted one of Ron's discoveries for himself.
That's what I was about to say. He probably wanted to claim something as his own.
He did. And so it cost them 75 days in prison in Saudi, then 3 days in Jordan. That's where they debriefed them and all, but they were still, in prison. So these are the things that he found. And he had many things happen along the way. It went through a lot of people. Well, I'll tell you this. When I met him, and the second time I ever saw him, he told me, he was telling me his life story about all of the things, especially about during his work, and how he had been betrayed by everybody he had ever worked with. And when I started saying, why are you telling me this? I didn't even know the man. And he said, because if we're going to be married, you need to know. And that was such a shock to me. But he apologized. He said, I'm sorry, I should not have said that like that. But he said, I had prayed for someone to help me. And I'd been doing this all these years by myself. And he said, when I met you in the office, because he had come up to my office to tell us about Noah's Ark, he said, when I saw you, I knew it was you. And he said, but I didn't handle this very well. I should have explained. And after a lot of prayer and a lot of thought, I had also prayed and asked the Lord for someone, because I was a new Christian. I'd been divorced 10 years. I was raising a child by myself. And in January of that year of 88, I'd asked the Lord if it was His will. I felt like what prompted that was I was going to a church and volunteered to help with their young people. And they said, "Oh, that's great." But then when they found out I wasn't married, they said, "It won't work. We need a couple." And so that's when I realized I needed some, So I remembered my prayer, and this was only 3 months later. So the only person I really talked to was my daughter's father, because if I'm going to marry somebody, she's going to be living in the same house, and I wanted to talk to him. And he said, "Well, I trust you." So I took that to mean, okay. So I did. I married him pretty quick.
Are you a hunter, a hiker, or just an outdoor enthusiast? Well, if you are, you know that good quality gear is hard to come by. And finding all-American made is like finding Bigfoot in the woods. Hence the name of Squatch Survival Gear. Head on over to squatchsurvivalgear.com. Use the code PLP10 for 10% off store-wide. Are you a member of the All Access Pass? Oh, you'd be pretty cool if you did. Not only that, you get access to the rest of this episode, because this is an All Access Pass exclusive episode. But hey, if this teaser wetted your whistle and you want more, head on over to PrometheusLensPodcast.com and sign up for the All Access Pass, or click the link down in the description. Not only will you get access to this full episode, but you'll get access to a library of such tasty content that'll make your tongue slap the back of your brains out, son. Along with that, you'll get 48-hour early access to all future episodes, an ad-free listening experience on Spotify and Apple, and access to the monthly Q&As with authors and researchers. What are you waiting for? 5 seconds of courage can change your life. Click that link, baby. You'll thank me later.